So the topic that we have in mind this is Jimmy's suggestion, right?
Yes, mortality,
Yeah.
that we are all gonna die for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. What made you think about this? What brought it on?
Oh, I would say it really started really thinking about it. Like, so since last year when my father passed away, what was the line? I remember after that I read something and it really struck a chord with me. Something about your parents have lived without you in their lives, but you've never lived without them in your lives. And I think that's, to me, that's why I see like, the death of parents is so impactful in that sense, because someone that you kind of like, I've always seen them to be, especially if you lose them as an adult, right? As an older adult like me, which I've been very blessed. I wasn't super close to him, but still, it's that relationship, right, of parent and child. And since then, I've just been thinking, and also getting older. That was why when I was talking to Sue, I was like, actually, with like age, I think mortality is something probably people feel. And also in my line of work, where we deal with, as an agency, we deal specifically with financial services clients. Some of them would deal with like end-of-life planning or estate planning. And usually it's also people who have gotten to a certain age and realizing, okay, you have lived more than you haven't, and that thought. So that's why I was like, it would be interesting to hear what both of you have to share about mortality and all the different topics it can spring into.
For me, I thought of mortality from a very young age because I am a child of fairly older parents. My parents were like in their late 30s when my mother gave birth to me. So I always felt that my parents were like very old, and because they were like a good 10, 15 years older than my friend's parents, they got sick earlier, of course. Yeah. And then I think, Shamala, I told you about my dad being in hospital and how that traumatized me as a teenager, Yeah. So seeing that from my teens, I already had a very strong knowing that, everyone's gonna have to walk this road. But back then, it was filled with a lot of fear. Yeah, I saw death. I saw the death of my parents with a lot of dread and fear. Yeah. So mortality was very real to me from a very young age, sadly. Yeah. Then when I went into my 20s, it became more like my own mortality, because, you think that, as a young person, 20-something, we don't even think of sickness. We never think of making a will or whatever, right? But I kept still having that perception that death is just always around the corner. You never know. To the point where I became a hypochondriac. Yeah. So maybe because I was always thinking of death, like when I had a headache, I would jump to the worst conclusion: I have brain tumor and I'm gonna die. Yeah. So I lived my young life like that, with this weird tangle with death and the idea of death. Yeah. Ironically, now that I'm closer to death more than I ever have, we have a great relationship. Yeah. I'm prepared. Yeah. I like to think I'm prepared in a secular way, like estate-wise. And I'm also prepared spiritually. Yeah. So, I know, it's so weird. I'm just so glad that now, when I should be thinking of death more than I used to, I don't think about death. It's like, okay lah, if it happens, because it will, or when it happens, rather, not if. When it happens, then it happens lah. Yeah. But I don't ponder, I don't contemplate it, because why? If you worry about it, then do something about it, which I have. Both spiritually and secularly, I've done something about being prepared as much as I can for my death. Yeah.
I feel like, this is based on my spiritual belief, like everything we do right now when we're living, every decision we make, everything that we do is all in preparation for the point of exit. And so that's my belief. And that's why, when, like the question in the spin the wheel, right? It's like, even if it defies logic, I will go with the inner knowing, because I know my inner knowing is the compass that's going to guide me in the direction that I need to go for my soul, for my spirit, right? And so I don't look at death as the end. I look at it as a transition into something else. So in that sense, I don't have a fear. I also feel like looking at my parents, right? Like both my parents, my dad will be almost 91 and my mom is going to be 86. But when I look at them, I feel like old age, it's only a blessing if you are at peace. I feel like, it's interesting when people often say to me, "Oh, your parents are so old, they must be very blessed." I go, I don't know. I don't know. I find it very hard to answer or agree to that statement.
For me also, I feel that I have to die to meet my maker anyway. So if I don't die, I'll never meet him. And I want to meet him. I want to be there with him. I want to live eternal life with him. So that is, like you say, a doorway to go to eternal life.
Yeah.
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 You can't have one without the other.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think, our consciousness is the thing, right, that we take with us, right? So when we leave the body, our consciousness lives on forever. And that's why the cultivation of consciousness is so important, right? So whatever we do, whether we have a religion or not, I think that's not as important as having a spiritual practice, right? You can have a spiritual practice and not be religious, because there are a lot of people who are religious but are not spiritual. They're not connected spiritually in the sense that will help them to grow or develop their consciousness. It's just maybe just a habit, religious
Going through the
rituals.
motions.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so in that sense, I don't know how to define mortality in that sense, Yeah.
Funnily, now when people die, when people I know, whether they're close or not, I no longer see it as a tragedy. Yeah, not to say that I'm like you say about your parents, I'm so cold-hearted and because it's not always a bad thing, and it is not a bad thing. It's an inevitability, and of course we cannot choose. If we could, we would like to choose when, right? But we can't. So I don't mourn people in the way that I used to in the past. It's very weird. Yeah. And like when I go for wakes now, I have this sense of like, I feel bad for the very close loved ones, but it's more just empathy.
Yeah.
And there's this like funny joy actually in my heart that, okay, you have finally taken your rest and it's on to a new life. Yeah. And of course, we don't know how people live their lives. Even if we think we know them, we don't really know, right?
Yeah.
Only God knows.
So true.
Yeah.
That's between you and God lah. But I wish you the best, and I know He's merciful. So I guess hopefully everything will be all right. Yeah.
I think it's only a tragedy if it's for the people, like left behind, especially like if they have small kids, who pass away, right? And they are free. The kids are free. It's just that the people left behind, it's quite tragic for them in that sense, because then they're suffering, going through all the pain and all the grief, right? So in that sense, but not for the soul who left,
I always wonder if having a spiritual belief or a religion, like comparing somebody with that and somebody without that, right? Whether their thoughts around death would be different. Whether there's less fear with one and then more fear with one, or is it not so simplistic? Like, even if you're spiritually inclined, you could still have fear about mortality, and maybe the person who doesn't have any of this could be like, die long, like.
Yeah. I don't think religion has anything to do with it, because Like my parents are, I mean, they are Catholics, but they're not practicing Catholics. And so I don't know about my mom, but my father doesn't believe in anything beyond,
Okay.
even though,
Okay.
the Catholic faith says otherwise. But he, there's no basis, say, oh, that's the end. But I
Okay.
feel also secretly he fears death, and that's why he's hanging on. Everything else is to him is fake. Like, oh, why these people, go to temple, go to church, why they pray. It's all fake, what? He will say things
Okay.
like that. So that to me is very revealing about what's going on in his own consciousness. That's a real fear. That's an attachment to the physical world.
Hmm.
And the consciousness is not developed enough to go beyond,
Hmm.
and so to answer your question whether so whether people has a religion or not plays a part. Well, you can have a religion and still be like that, and
Hmm.
or the other way
Yeah. Yeah.
around, people
Yeah.
who don't have a religion but maybe they believe in something more, something deeper. Yeah, I think that
Hmm.
could make a difference to how they view
Yeah.
death. Yeah.
And I think some people feel that it's okay, what? So after this life, there's nothing, but it's okay because I am having this life, so I'm gonna make the most of this life. Whatever happens after I die, it doesn't matter because I won't know. Yeah.
Mm,
So that in a way is denying that their consciousness, their soul
yeah.
is on. Yeah. So if you
Yeah.
deny that, then there is nothingness. You
Yeah.
won't even have a consciousness to think
Mm,
or to desire, to want. You don't
mm,
exist anymore. Yeah. So to
yeah.
them it's okay. It's like turning off a light and that's the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
My God, I was just thinking of that.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say like, oh, it's like flipping, a
Yes.
switch, and then it's like,
Yes.
okay, that's it.
Yes. Yeah. So good
Yeah.
luck to them. Will you realize, oh my gosh, I'm still thinking, I'm still knowing and
Yeah.
experiencing, but just not in a physical way,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But I also think people who have no awareness, right, of this, and they beyond this physical world, if they are stuck in that thinking, they're not able to evolve in their consciousness because they're stuck in that thinking, right? I mean, I don't think that just because you die, suddenly become wise as a spirit. You don't, right? Whatever
no.
consciousness
Yeah.
you have now
You
is
will
the
be who you
same
are.
when you
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
And I believe that people who are still who just feels like, okay, it's just a light switch, right? It's nothingness. I feel the creator is merciful enough to absorb them back into the grand
Of
scheme of
course. Of
things,
course. Of
right?
course.
They're
Yeah.
not just going to
Yeah.
be hanging with nothingness.
Yeah.
Because,
They think they will.
yes,
But I believe they won't. They will
yeah,
be very surprised
yeah,
and pleasantly surprised, I hope.
yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on where the consciousness goes, right? Then they were stuck in purgatory, right?
It's
They're
okay.
just,
You still get there. In purgatory it's not bad. It's not bad. Yeah.
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 So, people still, I mean,
Yeah.
consciousness at the end of the day is everything. It
Yeah.
determines where we
Yeah.
go.
It's your essence, it's your
Yeah.
your life force actually.
Yeah, definitely life force. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way to
Yeah.
say it. Yeah.
But I always feel like people who don't believe in an afterlife, what do they have to look forward to?
Mm,
Because this life is nothing. I mean, to me, it's very short. Actually, it's a blip compared to eternity. Whatever we experience, if we think we experience everything in a very deep and intense way, actually, compared to eternity, eternal life is nothing.
mm,
Yeah. So if this is all you think you have, then I feel that you are depriving yourself in a sense that, and I would feel very sad if I
mm,
were you to think that there's
mm.
nothing more than this.
Yeah, but I feel also is highly determined by culture. In Asia, for example, the concept of reincarnation, right? It's very cultural. So even though they don't have a spiritual practice or religious practice, they still believe in reincarnation. So
Yeah?
for them is
Oh.
yeah, for them it's like what I do now determines where I go in my next life. So
Okay.
it's still a
Like
very good,
karma.
yeah, still a very good guide in that sense
Okay.
to guide
Okay.
them towards to become better people, even if they
Okay.
don't have a
Okay.
spiritual practice.
Okay.
So I think in many cultures, in Asia, and
Mm.
even if it's not spiritual, it's more cultural, it does contribute to, maybe decisions we
Motivates them
make.
to do, to be better people.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. You mentioned karma because, like, growing up, I have an uncle who, like, so my mom's side, they were all like Taoism. The Southeast Asian, I guess, brand of Taoism. It's kind of
Ancestral
Taoism
worship.
/ Buddhism, kind of like a
Yeah.
mash.
Yeah.
But he converted to a full Buddhist, so he became vegetarian and things like that. So I remember back then he would share a lot with me and then say, oh, there's this like reincarnation, people have different lifetimes, and they would explain. I remember that thought was so fascinating for me, and I've always tied it to like Buddhism, right? But as I grew older and with changing times and all that, it's interesting to hear people who are not, I don't think they're religious, but they have a spiritual belief in the concept of karma. It just depends on how broad that concept is. Do they see it only in that lifetime? So like, if you do bad, then it will come back.
What goes
It'll come
around
back to you
comes
in this
around.
lifetime, or they see it beyond that. There's more than one lifetime, So I thought that's fascinating. That something that I grew up with as a child that seems very tied to a particular religion is now like broader, more broadly accepted as like, or believed in, maybe not accepted, but believed.
Yeah.
But when you think of it, it is true, because all the love that you give, somehow it's distributed around the world, right? With your circle of people. And then it gets passed on, and then it inevitably will come back to you in some form.
Yeah.
In the same way, the evil that you do, you're sending out evil, then it will have repercussions. Somehow it will come back to you too, in a way.
Because the definition of karma basically means cause and effect, right?
You push something down, it breaks, then someone has to clean it up, then time is taken to do that, so maybe that person cannot do something else, or so it's just interconnected. Our lives are more interconnected than we realize. So whatever we do has an impact on the world. It ripples.
For sure.
Even the good that we do, can sadly have bad effects, because life is not perfect. So sometimes we just pick the lesser evil, in a way. It's like, okay, I still have to do this. I know this will impact this person, but you still have to do it lah.
And sometimes what you say, the good that we do can cause more harm, because our perception of good sometimes is a very narrow-minded perception of what good is. Like, so for example, you have a relative who is a gambling addict, right? And constantly wants money. So you think you're doing good by giving the fella money, right? But then in the long term, it's not good.
You're not helping that person.
So our perception of what is good really depends on our worldview, how what kind of perspective are we looking at from, macro or micro. And so I think it all makes a difference, and that impacts. There's a rippling effect for sure. Is this how you envision the conversation on mortality?
Yes, and I actually have another question which I thought about, and that is, I'm trying to think of the best way I can ask it so it doesn't sound confusing, but I guess my question is, when you came into acceptance, of both of you, that mortality is obviously inevitable and all that, right? And there's a certain making peace with that. Does that also change how you view certain things? And I have a very specific question, which may sound frivolous, but things like material things,
Absolutely.
does it take away certain? Does it make you think?
Absolutely.
Oh, I really want to buy this, but you know what? I the end of the day, this is all transient, this is all, and then you're like, okay, I'm not gonna buy it. Or does it change things, or does it make you
Yes.
think, actually, all the more, if it makes me happy, I'm gonna get it because this is this
Okay,
lifetime.
I think Shamla remembers I had a spin the wheel question about what is that one question now that I ask myself very honestly, and that is, do I really need this? I certainly want it, but do I need it? Yeah, so that is kind of like my guiding question to my consumerism habits nowadays. Do I really need it? Yeah. And the other thing is, I know I cannot take anything, a stitch of anything I have with me. So is it gonna be at least left behind to help someone? Then okay, at least there is some enduring value. Yeah. And or otherwise, then don't accumulate, because it's just basically accumulating, whether it's within your own space or out there in the landfills of the world, that you're throwing away all the things you wanted but now you don't want, and you throw them away. And now I also think about how the people who are left behind have to deal with my stuff, my crap that I accumulate. Yeah. And I keep having this vision nowadays, in a nice way, of my two nephews like grumbling over my things, like, oh my god, this auntie so, like, Brandon, can you believe she kept this? Like, that kind of thing. I mean, it's a funny thing, and then sometimes I smile to myself. So I tell myself, no lah, don't give them a hard time, because they have been left to deal with. I've already made it such that, yeah, they will have to take care of everything. And yeah, no, so I'm quite conscious, like, things I don't need, can give away, good enough, give away. If not, throw, like, really cannot use, really throw. And then, do I really need to buy new things? And I've come to the conclusion, if I never bought a single new garment ever again, I will be fine. We have enough clothes to last our lifetime, the rest of our lives. Yeah, even accommodating style changes. Yeah, I think it's fine. I've got it all. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
It does change a lot.
Yeah.
And you, Shamala?
I've always been like this. Like, I buy things that serves me, in the sense that, is this going to make my life easier? Then I'll buy. I don't buy for, like, I'll wear my clothes, right? I'll wear for a very long time. Very, very long time. Like, I have dresses I have this particular dress that's been around I think even when we were partying, Sue.
Is it this blue and white floral one that's like almost a wrap dress?
No, a patchwork dress that I still have. And I think when my daughter, I think she wore it once, so she can still wear it. So I even have shoes, from that time. So I don't buy unnecessary. I buy if I break something, then I buy. But when it comes, I think I spend more money on my pets than I do on myself. Like their food, their stuff, like, because for them the things run out very quickly.
Yeah. That's a necessity.
And so for myself, I only buy, like, when things break down, like when when the cats destroyed my monitor, I have to buy a new one. That sort of a thing. I'll buy tools that will make my life easier. Like, like tools, kitchen tools, that I feel, okay, this is going to make things easier in my tiny kitchen, so I can cook better, But other than that, no. I also have this thinking, about accumulation, right? And I always tell my daughter this, because she used to complain a lot, like, why are you always throwing stuff away? I say, if I don't do it when I die, you have to do it. She went like, oh, okay, then carry on.
It's true, right? Yeah.
So, but I still feel like I have a lot of stuff, But then the things, I guess I use them, and they're part of my work, because my office is in my home, right? So then it's like, it feels like it's double the amount of things, because it's office stuff and my own personal stuff and animal stuff. So it feels like there's a lot of stuff, but I try and clear them, I don't use them. If I don't use, I throw. If not, then most things I still, I still have. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I spend the most on insurance now. On
Mm.
health insurance, hospital insurance, then there's car insurance, house insurance, yeah. So when I calculated my expenses, I realized like, okay, that fixed cost is actually the
Same.
highest. Right. And
Yes.
honestly, you don't really need to spend a lot on anything else.
Yeah.
If you've got that covered, then it's fine. Everything else is just
Yeah.
window dressing, in
Yeah.
a way. Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. Insurance is the fixed
Yeah.
cost.
Correct.
Yeah.
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 That's the one that
Right.
when I look at my expenses, I was like, how come And then I would group them and then I'll be like, wow, okay.
Yes.
When
It's
you
very, very
really
high.
analyze them, it's like, okay,
Yes.
Very
Yes.
high.
that's like the
Yeah.
biggest expense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
waiting for my daughter to start earning so I can transfer it back to her. She can start paying for
Paying her
herself.
own, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, because it's a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, a bit of a segue slash U-turn, but earlier when we started and Shamala, you were talking about just being old itself, it's not necessarily like a blessing, old age itself, right? Because I guess, I don't know, like in Chinese culture, it's always, if you hear somebody's parents are of a certain age, you go, wow, must such like 好命, right? We would say,
Yeah.
because there's a certain age, but I think it's the quality of life too.
Yes.
And yeah, and I remember, okay, hopefully I'm not going all over the place, but I remember when I first in secondary school, I first learned the word euthanasia. I was like, oh my god, that is such a amazing word to learn, and I've been fascinated by it, and my views towards it has changed. So from like fearful of like mortality, which is inevitable, but fearful, to acceptance, the correspondingly my view about that changed too, and I've always thought like, oh, actually it would be so nice if people can choose, how they, well, maybe a little bit controversial, but I feel like, oh yeah, it would be nice if people can choose, because then what is life if you don't have the quality of life? You're alive, but maybe you're not even aware of it.
I think there are some people who also withhold treatment. Let's say they know that they're gonna die, and even with the treatment, it's not gonna help. So they stop the treatment and just to quicken the process for themselves. But I have also heard, I'm not sure whether this is fake news, but in some parts of the world, if you have a mental health disorder, they are going to legalize this for people to make that decision to end their lives. But I feel like if they're not of sound mind, how can they make that decision?
They are the last people who should be making that decision.
Yeah.
I mean, they can have someone of sound mind to decide. It's like a medical directive, but no lah, that's ridiculous.
So I feel
Doesn't make sense to me.
to me that I think this was talked about or discussed in Canada, where you have the option, like if you're very depressed, you don't feel like living anymore, then
wow.
That's suicide. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure whether that is fake news or is true, but I've read quite a lot about that, and I thought,
Oh my
that's very
gosh.
bizarre.
Yes.
If they do allow it, very twisted. But I personally will not go for it, even if I'm suffering, because as part of my belief, right? My spiritual belief is the suffering in the physical body may be part of the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
I'm
so,
with you
yeah.
on that note.
And so I will allow the time.
Yeah.
Having said that, when it comes to my pets,
that's different.
I would do it.
Pet animals they're not the same as human beings. Yeah. So like for me, life is, you cannot take. Life is sacred. It's not for us to take because it was not us who gave ourselves life. So I believe the higher being, God, gave us life. So He takes it when He feels it's the right time. Yeah. And even if you are unable to move, but if you can think, you can still actually do good. Can still pray, I believe. Yeah. Okay, if you're in a coma,
Brain
depends.
dead.
If you are brain dead, then that's considered, I don't know, to some extent, medically dead, right? I mean, if you
Yeah.
need life support to live, that's not really living. If
Yeah.
you take away the respirator and you die, then I think death had already
Yeah.
taken you, but it's just a machine artificially keeping you
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But
think
if
it's in Singapore they do pull the plug if you are that way. They don't
yeah, so
yeah,
it's
they
not
don't let you
like
continue.
controversial or anything anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you have, say, cancer and you're suffering, you're in very, very deep pain, and if the treatment makes you suffer even more and gives you less quality of life than if you didn't go for whatever treatment, but you spend the next 2 months as compared to 8 months, you know, being able to spend time with your family in a qualitative way, then I think it's okay to
Mm,
deny yourself
yeah.
of that treatment. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not like, oh, I want to die, I want to commit
Mm,
suicide. It's just,
yeah.
I know I'm gonna go, it's a matter of time, but I
Yeah.
choose how I want to live rather than when I want to die. And that's
Yeah.
very different. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Or even if you have a debilitating illness that is degenerative, like people who have ALS where your muscles just die off, right? That's a terrible illness to have.
Yeah.
I hope to think that if I'm ever in that position, I will have the strength to say no. Don't just take me. I will go when my maker tells me come home.
Mm.
Yeah, because I mean I believe there's redemptive suffering. Suffering is not for the sake of suffering. Suffering has a purpose and a meaning, and it can help other people. That's my belief, that I can offer that pain I have, I carry for the good of other people.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, we talked about like the choice, right? And then it made me think about this thing called like the do not resuscitate in a hospital.
The medical
And then sometimes,
directive, right? Advanced
yeah, and
medical
sometimes they
directive.
will ask the
Yeah,
like when
DNR.
they
Yeah.
feel that the patient's condition is kind of like,
Yeah.
then they will ask the living the next of kin, like, okay, so if it goes into that, then do you, and I remember always thinking, oh, that's such a TB kind of thing until
The defibrillator.
yeah, like, that's such a TV thing to ask, right? And I always thought like, oh, that's the person who's being asked that kind of responsibility is so
Oh yeah.
so big, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, until I saw it happen, like with my father passing. It was in a different country, right? And then my sister and I, we were going there, and then his wife. So my mom and him had been divorced for like decades, but so his wife then I think called my sister and said, okay, so if he goes into the, like, say some needs help, right, like, and like starts having like a heart attack or whatever again, then, and at that point in time he's lost consciousness, then the doctor is asking, do you want to resuscitate? And then I remember my sister looked at me, I looked at her, and then I was like, oh man, this is such a heavy responsibility, so
Yeah.
and then she was like, yeah, of course. And then I remember she hung up the phone and we looked at each other, and then I told her, okay, if it were me, I don't know what I would have answered. I would probably have said the same. But it's all of the what we talked about, like, oh, is it humane? Does it make sense? Because at that point in time, the person's, I believe at that point in time, he was kind of kept alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than still fully,
Yeah. I think it also depends on how old the person is. If it's a much younger person, you would want to give the person a
chance.
right.
Yeah.
You would resuscitate to give a person a
The
chance, like
recovery,
for
there's hope for recovery.
yeah. But if it's an older person, I think it's best. I mean, if I were in a position, I would not. Yeah, because there's no
condition,
quality
right?
of life. When you reach a certain age, right? After they resuscitate, then so what? You're still gonna lie, in bed, and you're not able to move. You're not independent. You just become a burden, to other people. So it really depends, I feel. Like this is quite situational. It's hard to to say you can make a decision.
Right? It's such a, I was like,
Yeah,
oh man,
it's
that's such a
difficult.
big decision. Such a,
It is a big decision. Yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess that's why they make the advanced medical directive so that their next of kin don't have to struggle, and
Yeah.
they just like, okay, what's written in the thing, okay,
Yeah.
then you just follow it. That's his wish, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a priest whose talk I recently attended also said that, you know, medical advances, they move really fast, and you will never know when you're going to die. It could be by the time you are in that position. Do not resuscitate is a, it's like not having GPS, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, get what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
he said we cannot just assume that life is going to be like that, like
Yeah.
where we are now, and then you make this advanced medical directive. And you know what? If things change so much where it's not even something that we worry about, like, you know? So he was saying that we should not make a advanced medical directive by right. When that time comes at that situation, whoever has to make that decision, whether it's the doctor or whatever, let it be. Yeah. Yeah. And don't fuss about this. Yeah, yeah. And it's more important that you make a living will, LPA, right?
Yeah.
Lasting power of attorney, because that's when you are actually alive. You are carrying on, you know, but in a state where you cannot think for yourself. Yeah. And people can't just euthanize you, right? Or they shouldn't. So they need to know what to do. Yeah, that's more important. When you're dead, actually, a lot of things are like very clear. Yeah. You move on. People move on. But when you are still alive, you cannot make decisions for yourself. That's when your relatives, your loved ones have to like step up, and then they're like, what am I supposed to do? You know, with her house, with her this, that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is actually more important.
I was gonna like again, you know, maybe a slight tangent, but I on the topic of mortality still. But I think it was like 2 months ago. I was scrolling, looking at TikTok videos. So one of those that I came across, and I was so like wow that I actually went to search for the full thing. Right, was somebody did a bit of a paraphrase, which is what I'm gonna do now, of a poem that is about grief. And the way it was written, I was like, I've never heard grief described this way, and it's so true. The first few lines starts with grief is like glitter. So when you think you've gotten rid of it, there's always some more.
Yeah.
Like it could be
Somewhere.
days later, could be months later,
Yeah.
where you're cleaning something,
Yeah.
the corner of your carpet, and you realize there's some
Yeah.
glitter there. Where there's a, and I thought that's such a
Beautiful
poignant way
analogy.
and very accurate analogy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It is true. Yeah.
It is.
I must find that and share with you, both of you. But I was like, oh man, that really moved me.
Yeah.
Then I was like, okay, let me Google the full poem, and it's beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah, and it just totally changed the way I think about it. But it's so true.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think, oh, it's like, oh, okay, and then something will show you, oh, it's still there. You still find a little bit here and there. Yeah.
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 And it is okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And it is okay.
Yeah.
It's part of the human experience, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's your lasting connection with that person who has passed.
Yeah.
And it's remembrance. When you grieve, you remember that person in the deepest way, you know, all the feelings that you feel for that person, that you still feel. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just surfaces and you just experience it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in that sense, they still live on.
Yes.
Okay, that's what people meant when, you know, they live on in your memories.
You know, it's like the first time you've seen a dead body. Like, you know what I mean? The experience is like,
yes.
you've heard about it as a child, right? People talk about people dying and all that. But reality hits when you first time you see a dead body. Like, oh, it's like this. You know, it's lifeless.
Yes.
So then it makes it real. Then your understanding shifts. That, oh, actually it's not that scary. You know, like a dead body is a dead body, right? But you know the person is not there. It's very clear. The essence of
the
that
soul
person
has left.
it's not there, you know, it's very clear. It's
Yeah.
just a thing, you know,
Yeah.
the person's not there.
Yeah, but yet at the same time, if I remember my experience, at the same time, very it's mysterious and not in a scary way. Just where did she
Yeah.
go?
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Mm.
I was like, where did she go? And she was a very devout Buddhist. And I remember part of the rites and rituals, right, was that this was back when there were still kampongs. So this was my paternal great grandmother, and so my grandparents were still around. And this was the kampong, obviously bigger house and all that, right? And part of the ritual was the like Buddhist chanting, and instead of the body being in a coffin, the body was set on a chair and dressed with the
Oh, that's the
robes.
practice, is it?
Yeah, something like that, and dressed with the robes. Part of the thing was, back then, my mom kept telling me this, but as a child, I was like, okay, I don't understand the significance, but she kept trying to impress upon me, like, oh, this is very unusual, because usually, like, if a person is, okay, this so-called this is very unusual, meaning she's able to sit and still be very pliable, and later on be able to lay flat in a coffin, because she said, oh, when people die, they have that, what's the
rigor mortis.
Rigor mortis. Obviously, she didn't use that word, but then she explained that, oh, they will be stiff, right? And she's saying like, oh, this was probably due to her like
rigor mortis,
decades of practice and all of that. So that I remember. So that whole experience was just like first, death that I've experienced, first dead body that I've seen up close, and as the great grandchildren and part of the rites, part of the things we have to do was to, I think, fan. Fan, and you have to fan her, right? And remember, while I was fanning, sometimes I would go to these moments of fear, like, okay, this is kind of creepy. And then sometimes I'll go into these moments of fascination, and I'll look at her face and I'm like, where did she go? Is she still there? Like, it was. So that's why I remember it so clearly and so multi.
That's a lot for a young kid to
10-year-old
go through. My God,
I think that's healthy to experience
I feel that's really healthy.
Yeah, full spectrum emotions, right? And that's real, rather than one
run away and
or like tell stories,
deny it.
Yeah, it was quite. I remember it was quite fascinating, and during the day it would get. I mean, that's where the fascination is. During the night is when it gets a little bit, creepy, when you are the only one, when it's your shift. I remember my cousins, they will all be like, but I already did know. I was like, huh? Is it?
Nobody wants the night shift.
It's your turn again. Yeah, it's like it's your turn again. I was like, huh? But I just did it.
I guess
probably bullied you.
Yeah, and probably because I was quite like blasé about it. Like, oh, okay, lor. I just continue fanning, and the whole time as I'm fanning, I'm like thinking, oh, where did she go? Like, is this really true? But I remember the emphasis that, like I said, my mom made, right? It truly only like struck me like a brick on my head as I got older and I truly understand the rigor mortis thing. And I was like, yeah, that's fascinating, because it was a few days, and I mean, we all know like nature, right? Like decomposition. It was amazing. After that, she was laid flat in a coffin, and no issue. There wasn't any forcing.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Rigor mortis is only for the first don't know how many hours, right? After that, it's pliable. Like the corpse is pliable. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, I have a question. Since we were talking about dreams and now we're talking about people who have passed, what do y'all make of dreaming about people who have passed?
Oh my gosh! I wanted to ask this.
That happens to me a lot. Yeah, I dream about my parents a lot.
I wanted to ask this. Thanks for asking this. Yes.
Yeah. And there was recently I dreamt about 3 people who had already passed. So the people who were in my dream were people who no longer existed in this world. Yeah.
I think it depends on what's happening in your life as well, because there are many meanings to this. I don't believe that people who, like, if you dream of someone dying doesn't mean a person is going to die. I always believe from a psychological perspective, that person represents a part of you, like maybe let's say dreaming of a grandmother pass away, that grandmother could represent the matriarch in you. And so maybe that part of you is dying, right? So that's one way of looking at it. If you dream of people who have passed on, it really depends on what your mindset is at that point in time. You have to think about what happened, how you were feeling, and what these people represented for you. Yeah, it's
Okay.
not necessarily that we are really connected to the people that who
They're
passed
just
away.
like symbols of
Yeah, the symbols.
areas of our thoughts and
Yeah.
our lives. Yeah.
Having said that, sometimes we do get spiritual dreams like that, where we actually dream of these people who have passed on, who are back to communicate with us for some reason, right? So that can happen too, but it depends on how close you are, I guess. If you're not very close, then why would they want to appear in your dream? You know what I mean? If it's your loved one, maybe they have a message for you, then yeah, maybe likelihood that it is some form of a spiritual connection. But in general, I don't think that people you don't know very well, they're not gonna pop up in your dream like for reason. It's usually a more psychological symbol.
And I guess if they have just passed, it's quite
Mm.
likely you would also dream of them because you're thinking of them.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Oh, I have another question which you all may think is a bit morbid but funny as well. Have you ever thought of what kind of coffin you would like?
Yes.
Strangely enough, I did think about it recently.
Me too.
Okay, you go first then.
Okay. I want a completely black one. Like jet black, shiny jet black with a silver crucifix, like a white metal crucifix on top of it. I keep seeing white coffins nowadays. It's like a trend. I've not seen a brown or rosewood, or the lighter colored brown ones for a very long time. It's almost like a trend. And like, yeah, no, very Snow White.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would like a totally black one.
Okay.
Okay, I haven't thought about the color. I haven't reached that stage yet, but I know I want something simple. Some of those out there can be very elaborate, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I want something really simple.
Yeah, I think overseas they have a lot of these like Wedgwood blue ones. It's quite common, right? Or grey. I don't know, maybe I watch too much TV. It's almost like the Wedgwood blue, that very muted blue. And yeah, or very nice, tasteful grey. I've seen those. And they're not that coffin shape. They're usually just rectangular, but with a little dome. Like the cover is a bit domed, right?
Okay.
Yeah, you don't see those here. Here it's like standard.
Yeah. Unless you have it customized.
I guess. Yeah. I never thought of that, customizing. Wow.
Yeah. You should. I mean, if there's something you want, you should consider it first. Have it planned. They do future planning for the funeral service.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna say I have a follow-up question about, have you guys thought about
I have, of course, yeah.
like what the format will be of your
the format.
For me, it's very easy because I'm Catholic, so it'll be a Catholic mass and a Catholic burial and all the rites that go with it. I picked my hymns. I've not picked the readings though, so I think the readings are quite standard also for funerals, so I think that's fine. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, otherwise it doesn't really matter.
Have you thought about it, Shamala?
Not really. I think my mind is more focused on my parents. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it?
Sure. That's a reality. Yeah.
So,
have you asked them, or it's too taboo to?
They don't want to talk about it, so they will go like my father will say, "You can do whatever you want. I'm dead already."
Okay.
Right. I mean, that's what he says. But how he feels about it, I don't know. But I'm just gonna do simple for them. For myself, I've not thought about what kind of coffin. I mean, I don't really care. It can be even cardboard. I really don't care. But my thing for a period of time is I want my ashes to be planted and to become a tree.
Okay.
That's my
Your
focus
wish.
more than the
Okay.
coffin. Coffin,
Okay.
I don't really care.
Okay. It's going to be
So-
incinerated anyway.
yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
So
Yeah.
even if it's cardboard, I don't really care.
So it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've not thought about. I mean, I'm a baptized Catholic, but I'm non-practicing Catholic, so I'm not sure the direction it would go in terms of how it would be like. So I do need to start thinking about that. Yeah, how
Have you told your daughter? Like, have you made a will?
I've made a will, but I've not told her. I feel she's a bit young. Maybe now I can talk about it a bit more because now she's 20, right? So hopefully she has the maturity. I didn't have the space or the, like, okay, I'm not going to talk to her about this now that she's going overseas to study.
Of
I think,
course. Yeah.
but maybe, in a few years, I will talk to her about it. Yeah. But yeah, probably be just a simple ritual, nothing. I mean, to make life easier, maybe to go the Catholic route, then there's no decision to be made.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just this morning, knowing that we were gonna chat tonight, right? I was getting ready and I just had this thought about, and if there's a religious kind of leaning, it makes it like you have something
Of course.
to fall back on. Otherwise, it is such a thing. I feel like it's such a it really marks a milestone in the life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You really kind of grow up in a way.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
grow
that act
up,
of you have to do this.
Yeah.
But I think those funeral houses, right? I mean, they're very professional.
They're very good
Yes.
now.
And if you don't have a religion, they will know what to do.
Correct. Absolutely.
They give you packages.
They are very, very good now. Yeah. I must say. Yeah.
So it does make life. I mean, you don't want the extra stress or having to
course.
plan all this, right?
I know.
Yeah.
You're already grieving. It's very unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want my pets' ashes to be with me though, in my coffin. Yeah, I mean, hopefully all of them would have passed by then because I don't want them to outlive me. That would be a terrible thing for them. Yeah, so all the little boxes of ashes will be in my coffin.
Interesting topic though.
Yeah, but I think we made it very light in a way.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, I think we were able to go kind of heavy, then light, and then
Yeah, I think we navigated it quite well.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, it's a topic that people should talk about and should think about. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, to just even come to terms with it and to make peace with it.
Yeah. Very important.
Because I feel like the sooner we make peace with it, then we will never know, right, when it happens. So it's the sooner you make peace with it, I feel that the less chance of and then it happened like that.
Thank you for having this conversation.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
chatting about
all
it.
of you.
Yeah, it was good.
And got to learn, more about you, Shamala, and even more about you, Sue.
Yeah.
I really learned about you too.
Yeah.
Likewise. Yeah. Do join us again
Yes.
anytime.
Looking forward to doing that.